has a lot to do with the culture that the assistant chief and the commanders and the supervisors and I are trying to model and trying to hold people accountable to every day.
Well, excellent. You also promoted a number of sergeants so that each shift now has a immediate supervision.
Most shifts, 4 out of the 5.
Oh, okay.
We had a recent departure, which created an opening at the sergeant's rank, and we will. Right now, we're allowing a few people to work their way through as an acting watch commander to gain the experience and see if it's something they're interested in doing, and allows us to coach and mentor a little. And then we will be going to HR asking to do a new promotional process probably within the next 3 or 4 months.
Okay, and one other thing that stood out to me that you haven't mentioned yet, and I was happy to see in the ORI report, was about counseling becoming more available, and the mental health, the recognition of the mental health issues associated with not just, major incidents that hit the major newspapers and affect, everyone down to a clerk or at the office, but, the day-to-day and the, death notices and all those things that affect you mentally, that you've instituted some protocols regarding that. You want to talk about that?
Actually, I didn't. What I'd like to do, if he's willing, is to call the assistant chief up. When I got here, he had initiated a relationship with Restoration Family Counseling Center out of Vacaville and their lead clinician, Sherie, Mahlberg, and it has been a game changer for us. I can't take credit for it. He had it set up when we got here. We've continued it. But I do come from an environment where wellness is pushed and urged, and it comes from us as leadership making it okay for that to happen. That wasn't okay when I was a young officer. It was quite the opposite. And now it's incumbent upon us to say, not only do we say it's okay for you to get help, but we want you to get help. We're going to order you to get help if you need it. And so this is a great organization that we've teamed up with, and with the the assistance with HR and the city manager to approve a contract. But if you don't mind, I'd like the assistant chief to talk about a little bit how it came about and some of the successes that we've seen from this.
Yeah, absolutely. Assistant Chief Stevens, welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair, board members. How are you? In 2021, we unfortunately had a officer-involved shooting involving, I think, 5 of our officers, and then, of course, you add on the dispatchers, the officers that are on scene, and their family members. And as a part of that, we did a debriefing, reached out to a company who we were currently using for mental health, a mental health app that they have, and provide resources to our employees. And through that, we were introduced to Sherie Mahlberg, who was a contract employee for Cortico, but who also runs restoration, family services, and first responder services out of Vacaville, California. Sherie is married to a battalion chief for Vacaville Fire. Her son is a officer with Vacaville PD. Her daughter's now a dispatcher. So she understands the first responder's life, and she's been living it for 30-some years now. Her office, when it comes to first responders, she specifically trains counselors. They have to go specific training through her, get approval through her before they are allowed to see first responders. And they have to be a first responder family. They have to understand the life. So she's very specific on who she chooses to train and assign to work with first responders. After that debriefing, I had the opportunity to help a local officer who was in need. They came to me for some assistance a family member did. I was able to call her office, got them an appointment immediately, and it was life-changing and career-saving for them. And that started my relationship with Sherie and the success that I see come out of her office. Following that, we had a debrief with all the family members that were involved in relationship to the OIS. And then we started looking at the need for a countywide peer support team and a more robust peer support team within our own department. One of the big things that happens after any major event is to be able to diffuse that situation as quickly as possible. And that is the opportunity for the members of our agency to have someone to start talking to, venting. And that's where peer support comes in. They're their first line a person for someone to sit with and start to get things off their chest and start to help them work through that, because the trauma will lessen the more opportunities they have to do that early on with somebody that is properly trained to do that. So currently with Sherie, about a year after the OIS, we started mandatory meetings with her and her team. So we made it mandatory. Every employee in the department had to sit for 1 hour with the clinician. You didn't have to say a word. You just had to be there. Everybody talked, and even the toughest cops we had, after a little bit of time, started to talk. And they could talk about whatever they want to talk about. But what the core of that was, they were building their relationship with the clinician. They were understanding it's okay to have a conversation with someone and understand more about Sherie's business. After that, we now do, every year, we do annual debriefings like that. They're 30 minutes, unless you're a brand new employee, and then it's 1 hour. As a part of a contract that we have with Sherie, and that we're currently trying to extend to a 3-year long-term contract, is that we pay for 12 clinician visits a month for our employees. And for a large portion of the time, 3 or 4 of those may have been used at any one given month, because we get billed every month for those. The more our employees have become familiar with the services, the more the stigma is breaking down, the more life happens with our employees and their families. We're now paying for 18 to 20 of those a month. Doesn't mean people are broken. It means people understand that this is a resource that is there for them that they are using. And that's what makes me happy. They're actually using the resources we're putting out there for them. So our contract's going to extend that a little bit, so we don't have to pay as much for the overpayments. This is something that Sherie's group has now expanded. I get phone calls from agencies all over the state wanting to know how the program works. It's like a smorgasbord of opportunities under the contract. You can pick and choose what pieces you want. We've chosen pretty much the Cadillac version of this because she was there for us in the beginning, and we see the benefits. It's available to family members, can use it. So wives, spouses, girlfriends. If you're attached to an officer or an employee, you can call and receive services. The biggest thing for me is after, not this year, we just did this year's debriefs. Last year's debriefs, we had a department barbecue. And that department barbecue just happened to fall on the same day, the last day that Sherie and her team was here, so we invited them to the barbecue. And one vision in my head is they're all going to be sitting with admin because they're going to be shunned by everybody else because they're the clinicians and this is their family and their kids and all the spouses were there. And it was absolutely the opposite of what happened. They walked in, had wives and family members and kids running up to them, inviting them over to their table. They spent 2 to 3 hours with us. They were accepted into the fold. And at that point, I knew that we had chosen the right services for our people. They understand it. They appreciate it, and I honestly believe we're saving employees and family members and marriages every day. So that's the big part of the program that we've instituted. We also have a new app, Mindbase. It's a mental health app. It works with a company that has access to our calls for service through our CAD reporting system. They don't get to see names and stuff. They get what we tell them they can get, which is just the title of a kind of call. So a suicide, traffic accident, fatal accident, homicide. We've assigned points to those kind of calls. And what they do is then track how many points an officer gets over a period of time. And when that gives us the opportunity to see what kind of exposure they're getting to the highest level of calls that could cause trauma in their career. And that is just a cue. Doesn't mean anything's wrong. It's just a cue for our peer support team then, who the lead gets those numbers. They can then have members reach out and just check in on them and make sure they're doing well. That app also has all kinds of resources for any type of addiction issues that may be out there, mental health services, family services, and then we can expand upon that too. But that's the mental health piece that we have added into our department, which has been a complete asset. It's expanding across the California right now with her and her group. Our insurance company, Sherie, that oversees the city, is working on a master contract after we did a presentation with her, which then will benefit all the agencies within Sherie to get a discounted rate, which will be Fortuna, Arcata. The Sheriff's Department has signed on with Sherie and her team. So, and I'm happy to announce she's actually closing on a location up here where she's going to open an office with a clinician up here full time. It's going well, and it's going to really benefit our department and law enforcement locally altogether.
Wow. Impressive. I think that is money well spent, for sure. Yeah.
I believe the city's saving money by the services we're providing because we're keeping our people on the streets and out of seeking additional help.
Absolutely. I think that tracking system is incredible.